It's great to see everyone. And so as normal, we will begin with the meeting process notes to start with. This meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform. Only executive committee members and staff are on the Zoom meeting. The public can view this meeting via live stream on our CWDB YouTube page. A link to that page, the meeting agenda, and meeting packet information can all be found on our website, which is cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. A recording of this meeting is also going to stay on our YouTube page. Public comment is now open and can be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov. And for those of us participating on the Zoom, please feel free to make a request on the raised hand feature to speak, or you can type speak into the chat function as well. All emails will be read aloud during the public comment periods noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. We can allow for 3 minutes for each comment, so please be concise. And going back to my comment regarding the chat function, note that anything that is typed into the Zoom chat box will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So before we get into the agenda, quick updates on new board membership. So as you know, by federal law, the governor appoints members of the California Workforce Development Board. State law actually also requires representatives from the state legislature, which are appointed by the legislative leadership. 2 members from the Senate are appointed by the Senate pro tem, and 2 members of the Assembly are appointed by the Speaker. 1 new senator was appointed and has joined our board, replacing the outgoing Senator Connie Leyva. Honorable Dave Cortez, who represents District 15, State Senate from Santa Clara County. We also have 2 new Assembly members that are appointed and have joined our board, replacing Assembly members Mullen and Salas. Those include Honorable Pilar Chiavo, Assembly member District 40 in the San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valleys, as well as Honorable Damon Connolly from Assembly District 12 in the North Bay. We also hope to add the new Chancellor of the California Community Colleges, Dr. Sonia Christian. Chancellor Christian was selected by the California Community Colleges Board of Governors back in February, and previously she served as Chancellor of the Kern Community College District. She replaces outgoing Chancellor Eloy Ortiz Oakley, who stepped down back in August. So now it'll take us to actually our action item portion of our agenda for all of your consideration to approve November 2nd, 2022 meeting summary, which can be found on page 4 of your agenda packet. Are there any comments or questions from the executive committee? Okay. Staff, do we have any public comments?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, there are no public comments at this time.
Perfect. We can entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Nancy.
Seconded.
Thank you, Bob. Second by Bob. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. It's some affirmation. Any abstentions or nays? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We'll now proceed to the updates and discussion portion, and we are very fortunate to have the privilege of having our Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development Agency, our good friend Stewart Knox, joining us. Stewart Knox was appointed by Governor Newsom in December 2022. Many of you I know him well and work well with him. He's held multiple leadership positions at the local and state levels, including Undersecretary of Labor Workforce Development Agency since 2021. He previously served in that role also in 2019 to 2020. He served as Senior Vice President of Calbright Community College from 2020 to 2021, Executive Director of the Employment Training Panel from 2014 to 2019, Director of Health and Human Services for Nevada County back in 2014, Director of Economic and Workforce Development for San Mateo County from 2013 to 2014, Director of Northern Rural Training and Employment Consortium from 2009 to 2013, and then executive director of the North Central Counties Consortium from 2006 to 2008, and director of workforce for City of Glendale from 2004 to 2006 for Yuba Community College from 1997 to 2004. So as you can imagine, he has an extraordinary wealth of experience and knowledge. Is a creative, smart, dedicated public servant to the people of California. So I'm honored to have Secretary Knox join us. We'll turn it over to you, Secretary.
You must have started working when you were 13.
I know, we left some off. Well, I don't know. I always figure that, I don't know how well that looks. I mean, yes, it's a lot of experience, but it's like 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. But there's a reason for all of that, right? That used to look bad on resumes. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I think I know most all the folks on the Zoom today, so I appreciate the time. Yeah, I just kind of give a quick overview and a little bit of update of some of the work labor agencies moving ahead, and talk a little bit about the budget. If some of you saw the hearing, I mean, obviously a little bit of this is similar to my hearing, confirmation hearing, which is really the vision of the agency around worker outreach. And we really want to make sure that our workers are taken care of in California. And I think we're probably the premier state within the nation, and working with our labor friends and our labor commissioner's office. We really want to continue to strengthen those components. And so that is a major priority for the administration and for the agency going into this next final 3 years, I guess, or 14 quarters as the governor calls it, into the next, to the end of the administration. And we want to obviously work at with EDD and all of our friends there. Nancy, in terms of EDD Next, is a huge priority. It's obviously a $1.2 billion, it might be 1.3 billion now. Project, add some dollars to that. Project that the modernization of EDD Next, and as you've heard Nancy talk about it many times, it is not just an IT project, but it is a customer-centered approach to the way that we deliver benefit packages, and securities to the individuals of California. And so thrilled to be working with Nancy and her team to do that work. Any support we can provide, we will do. And then obviously under workforce development, which has been my history of 29 years, mostly around the workforce development system, really figuring out, Tim and obviously the workforce board has done an amazing job of getting state resources and developing strategies on the way that we have state resources. How do we continue to have that amount of funding in the future is going to be a really, a big venture for Tim and staff and others, and probably will take the legislature and the governor's office to make sure that we have this continuous funding as we move forward, because we know how important it is to perform and also show some return on our investment. We know how good it works. I think we need to show the numbers of how well it works in a way that is meaningful for the governor's office and for the legislature as well. And so I think just working through those processes, as you also know, we have 4 different workforce development entities. And I think in this administration, primarily, we've really collectively worked with Tim and others of all 4 to make sure that we're working towards the same end goals, whether it's an incumbent worker training, whether it's ATP, whether it's DAS, but we want to be all on the same page. And one of the key components to that is actually having a dashboard eventually, which will show those outcomes, much like CalSkills does, but in real time, of where we are in performance, how many numbers are served, what does that look like? We've done a little bit of that internal work already, and actually given some of that information to the governor himself, asking those questions around what does this look like? And, it's super impressive, so just to say, we did a snapshot of 2020 to 2021, which at the height of COVID is, we served 266,000 people within the 4 systems. And out of the 266, I always keep this with me somewhere, I think it's 164,000 were placed in employment. And so that's a 1-year snapshot. Cost per is about $3,500. So that's the kind of work we want to look at to be able to show to the public eventually of this is what the workforce system does. You brought up the community college new chancellor. Luckily, I have a really great relationship with Sonia, and so I look forward to working with the community college system in a way that we can have a much more broad scope, understanding that their system is $8 billion compared to our system. And so how do we really leverage those resources with the community college system and the adult schools throughout the state of California to encourage more enrollments and ways we can better work with that system. SURF, just a quick update on community economic resilience funds. So under EDD, for the fund itself, working with Office of Planning and Research, GoBiz, Labor Agency as kind of the leadership team, we've put out the $5 million per region. So all 13 regions have now been funded. And this is really the attempt, if you don't know the SURF design, I think most of you do because we've had phone calls about it probably, is really bringing labor and environmental justice and folks to the table around economic development tables that haven't been in the past. Bruce runs one of these. Thank you, Bruce. I'm sure it's going, yours is probably going really well. There's challenges, we understand that. And so, but that was also part of the design and we knew there'd be challenges. It's like we're bringing people to the table that typically don't talk to each other, or they do, but it's in the hallway. And so we're trying to be much more inclusive around the economic development approach. We've just put out another $39.5 million or close to $40 million for some early projects within the 13. Not all 13 were funded, not all of it, which is kind of also by the design. And we're also coming up with the approach to get out the bulk of the money in the next 6 months, which is called the Catalyst Project within the SURF program, which is really starting to look at pre-development. So trying to match up with the Jobs Act, which Tim is working really diligently on and trying to access funds through that. This could do early development within those regions so that they're able to draw down additional Jobs Act funding and also be prepared for that. And also looking at design of training programs that may be, which just reminds me, Tim, we should talk later about that, maybe another avenue of funds for the local areas for HRCCs too, after our earlier conversation. So anyway, all that said, a lot going on, as you can tell. We've built out our team at Labor Agency. I think we're actually almost fully staffed at this point. So I've been undersecretary. Jackie Roberts started on Friday, was sworn in, and started on Monday-ish. She's still being shared with the governor's office a little bit, probably for a while. But Jackie is now with us, which is a great strength for the Labor Agency, has great knowledge, obviously, and depth of knowledge of systems. And specifically around EDD, she was such a huge help during COVID from the governor's office. So thrilled to have her here. We have a new economy person that's basically Derek Kirk, who came from GoBiz, who really looks at a lot of Tim's projects and working with Tim's group around how do we design programs, and also with the CEC and other entities within the state to really develop a strategy around the SURF program as well. So, and we just brought in Ferris Treskanoff yesterday, who was sworn in, which is our new equity officer, who will really start to look at the way all of our systems, which I say all the time, are really around equity. We're fortunate for Labor Agency to have that lens at all times. And so we'll appreciate having a new deputy secretary that will really focus on how do we strengthen that for throughout the next 3+ years. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Secretary Knox. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Secretary? Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Secretary Knox, for that great update. Really are grateful for your leadership. We'll now proceed to our initiative updates. So to brief you on the board's work, we'll do a quick round of updates from Tim, Curtis, and the CWDB team. And then afterwards, we can open it up for comments and questions. So I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate, well, Stewart in general, Secretary Knox, and also the way he laid out the work that's going on at the state level in the agency and the departments inside the agency, but even broader. Stewart brings a set of skills and talents that I think are amazing, and we're all going to benefit from. The people of California are going to benefit from that. So really appreciate you. I wanted to take a little step back, not a total walk down memory lane, but a little bit, just to try to kind of lay out a little bit of the evolution of the work of the State Workforce Board and all of you in providing guidance to the State Workforce Board, and then kind of get into a little bit into kind of where we are now with high road training partnerships and high road construction careers. We started, when I started the State Workforce Board, as really a policy shop. That was our original mandate. A lot of you were here when I got here. A lot of you were here before I got here, as a matter of fact. Bob Redlow, Jamil Dada, Jeremy, others. We were pushing policies, and I didn't think we were having a whole lot of impact in a very large workforce system. As Stewart said, the community college system is huge. There are 45 workforce boards around the state. $500 million comes in every year for those. Most of it goes down to them via formula. Community-based organizations, a lot of apprenticeship programs, big system. We thought, at least to have some impact, we needed to start investing in program work, both to learn from program to inform the policy, but also to try to set up work that kind of showed the way in some sense, in terms of how we saw workforce development looking and coming together. So we did take some WEO discretionary money early on to try to influence policy and system change. We had Slingshot. Any of you remember that? It was a great program. In some workshop one day, somebody accidentally said sling shit, and that sort of stuck, unfortunately, no pun intended. But it was a good focus on regionalism, really good work that evolved into regional planning. We had an accelerator fund that's still in existence that was focused on innovation. We later invested in the high road training partnerships for the first time, just $3 million in WEO discretionary. And then we got general fund money for breaking barriers to employment and prison to employment a while back. Prop 39 was there for us, along with SB1, to start building and growing high road construction careers. In a state like California, the size of our economy, it's very little money. So those were really built as demonstration grants to try to, as I said, show the way and learn from policy and what those investments did. But a shift did occur in our thinking and our policy orientation to high road. And that sort of concept and those principles permeated all the work of the State Workforce Board. We thought just focusing on the supply side, preparing people for jobs, wasn't going to have the kind of impact we wanted to have. We were afraid that we'd just create more competition among low-wage workers for low-wage jobs, and that wasn't going to have the sort of moving of poverty in the state that we wanted to see. We wanted to intervene on the demand side, where the best jobs are, investing in industry-based coalitions that were committed to quality jobs, equity, climate resilience, those principles, and then get some scale there, so that we can move whole workforce systems, potentially colleges, workforce boards, CBOs, toward those same goals of quality jobs and equity, and then hopefully have deeper, longer-term impacts on employment. So the scale is critical, because we thought if we could build enough, have enough examples in critical sectors driving employment in every corner of the state, we could at some point reach a tipping point in the workforce system in terms of that system change and pulling things along. We had a nice budget surplus, right, Stewart? That really helped us. So over the last 3 years, we just for high road training partnerships and high road construction careers, and there's been growth among all the workforce programs inside the agency and outside too. The funding for HRTP and HRCC grew to $300 million. So we expanded 11 regional high road construction careers partnerships that Jeremy could talk a lot about. He's helping provide guidance to that system in a beautiful way. We went from 8 high road training partnerships to over 50 high road training partnerships now. And by the time we invest all of the HRTP funds, and we're getting close, we'll probably be north of 80 projects around the state. So we're not at that scale. We're still a $3 trillion economy, but we're getting closer to the kind of scale that I think will have some meaningful long-term impact. We started in hospitality and healthcare. We did some work in cannabis and janitorial and grocery, all the way to offshore wind, ports, logistics, warehousing, charging infrastructure, forestry, utility line clearance to mitigate fires. Transit is huge. It's actually gone statewide. Electric bus manufacturing, broadband even. So a real range of projects, really deep in construction, but also expanding across a lot of other different sectors in the state, important ones. There's an evolution, I think, to the work that you're guiding well, I know there's an evolution, constantly is sort of evolving. People say we keep changing and shifting, but I see a through line in all of the work. And when I explain it, I think some people agree. But we want to be smart with what little funding we have to create bigger impact than that funding should warrant, and not just tinker around the margins. The colleges and workforce boards are actually now co-investing with us. They're involved in most of the high road construction careers, colleges and workforce boards. In some cases, they're running the high road construction careers projects regionally. Same in high road training partnerships, more colleges are involved. The Chancellor's Office is co-investing with us there. Lumina Foundation funding is working with Jeremy and us to help build greater access and plug gaps in access to state-approved apprenticeship. And I think that's really important because philanthropy is also starting to co-invest with us. We have a high road training partnership fund that Irvine and other foundations are now co-investing with us. So we're bringing together not just the system, but even philanthropy. And we've been investing a lot in community-based organizations to build their capacity. A new opportunity, and I know the cliche is preparation meets opportunity. The infrastructure investments, as Stewart pointed out, are huge, massive, historic investments coming into every state, but California, importantly, because we live here, with the Jobs Act and IRA and the CHIPS Act, that I think is, well, it's going to drive demand for more workers. It's going to drive climate resilience in more sectors and create really huge opportunities for us to double down on pathways for people who have been marginalized, underrepresented in those sectors to get good quality jobs. So we're going to scale up the number of people who are actually getting into really good jobs just by virtue of this massive infrastructure investment. A new area of work that we're invited into, the State Workforce Board, with the guidance of Labor Agency and the help of Derek, who just came on board at the Labor Agency, invited into conversations with climate entities, state entities, and infrastructure entities to better understand how they could design their solicitations to get at equity, the equity goals they already have. So we have this opportunity to help influence that work so that we can bake in good standards when the money goes out, very demand side work, and also trigger or actualize actually the kinds of equity outcomes on the ground through our high road training partnerships and high road construction careers programs. So we've gone from little impact as far as I am concerned to much larger scale and potential impact with this new world of work coming in with the federal investments. So I say all that because I feel like it's good to sort of remind ourselves of what the trajectory has been and what the influence has been. And thank you for your guidance in all of this work. The State Board has been visionary, has been supportive, has pushed us, pulled us, and made this work meaningful and good. So that's my walk down memory lane. I wanted to hand off the microphone to Joelle to give you a little bit of information about where the funding is, and then maybe talk about our prison to employment and the evolution of that with Mike, who's on the line, and then have Joelle talk a little bit about breaking barriers. But before we go there, Mr. Chair, do you want to see if there are any questions or clarifications needed before we hand it off?
Yes, we have a comment or question from Bob Redlow.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the memory, Tim. It makes me feel pretty old. And we're not getting any younger, But I think our work makes a difference. And I just wanted to add, between obviously the work of coordinating all these funds, coordinating the HRTP and ETP and Accelerator, and making it all work together with state, working on the dashboard that Stewart talked about in terms of a common standard way to report back will really improve, our statistics and the quality and quantity of training that we're doing. But I think there's one other thing that was really important that we've really adopted over the last few years. And when I started, we didn't have this. And that is that almost all the training programs and all the grant applications that I see and read are all about, they're all, in healthcare, we call patient-centered care. In workforce, I think it's all about training care. We've adopted a system of where the trainee is most important. that we create we create great jobs that provide income security and equity, fantastic. But we also create career paths. If people don't want to just stay in a certain job, they want to move on to higher jobs. We created a system, a model of wraparound services. We created a model of working with our community-based organizations in partnership with recruitment. So we really reach into those communities that we do. And in almost every application that I see, that model that we've adopted and has come about over the last few years is being adopted across the state. And I think that's also really important and should be added to your comments. So I think that whole model of training, and Stewart, I see shaking his head, knows that well. We've been talking about that. I've been around as long as Stewart's been around, and we've been talking about that forever. So I think all that's really important to add to that. So thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. We'll proceed now to, you wanted to turn it over to Curtis, Tim?
I'm going to turn it over to Joelle.
Oh, Joel, my apologies. Joel, please.
No worries. Yeah, I'll do just a brief high-level overview of the funding for HRTP and HRCC and where we at as far as projects and awards. Happy to answer questions or provide more details. But for this purpose, I'm just going to do pretty high level and then highlight a couple things. So between 21-22 and 22-23 budget years, for HRTP, there was approximately $202 million allocated in a couple different buckets. We have awarded a little over $143 million of that to 64 projects, leaving a $62.8 million balance. We currently have $22.7 million that we're recommending for award from our winter cycle from the general fund and the general fund pot, and about $30.9 million that we're recommending from the winter cycle out of the healthcare bucket. So if you do the math, that doesn't leave a lot left on the table. So a couple highlights. In the 21-22 general fund bucket, there was originally $85 million. We have awarded 49.8 of that, leaving a balance of just over 35 million. Again, we're recommending 22.7, currently 11 projects from the winter cycle. And then in the healthcare bucket, from 22-23, there was 42.75 million available. We have awarded all of it. And again, there's 30.9 being recommended that will come out of the 23-24 bucket of funding. Let me see. And then for HRCC, we have years 1 through 5 of SB1 dollars. And then we have the 21-22 allocations. And we have actually awarded all of that funding. So we had a little over 14 million in years 1 through 3, almost 10 million in years 3 through 5. There was some carryover there. 15 million in general fund, 10 million with general fund with the community colleges, and 10 million with general fund with housing, and all but just less than 500,000 has been awarded for HRCC. So we have no HRCC funding left in the fund. And our HRTP funding is with the winter and the spring awards cycles will be depleted substantially. So happy to take any questions about that. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about, I think you're going to cover the contracting process and hire, and then I'll cover breaking barriers after that.
Yeah, and just a little context to that. One is there are a lot of board members, including you all, who are ambassadors to your communities and regions around the state, and you've been working with coalitions and actually building high road training partnerships and encouraging folks to apply. So we wanted you to know what's left in the pot. There's still healthcare money there, but it is rapidly winding down in terms of the funding availability, and so we encourage you to keep going. And know that getting projects in the queue is a good idea. This all was really the increase in funding was 21-22. So you can see over the last 3 years, we started with a lot of funds, but also, Joel, these dollars are good for 5 years. So it was multi-year funding, which was good. It's what we asked for. It allows us to not just, close out projects in a decent amount of time, but also allow people to come back and apply and scale up their work. So we've developed some funding mechanisms to help with that. There are challenges on all of this that I could talk to you about if you want to, but that's hopefully a little bit more context. Any questions about that, Mr. Chair? Should we take questions or barrel through?
We don't have any comments or questions right now, so let's proceed with Mike, please.
Thanks, everyone. And my name is Mike Rosetta. I'm manager over our grant development, selections, and agreements unit. So our team handles setting up the solicitation process and applications on the front end of our grant initiatives, and then we process contracts in partnership with our partners at EDD on the back end of that process. So really quickly, I'm just going to provide an overview of what our grant process looks like. We receive a lot of questions from our grantees and the public. So just kind of touching high level on how that works. Our current timelines for grant contract processing are around 6 months. Our current timelines begin starting with final award determinations. Following those determinations and approval from labor agency, our team takes over with a compilation of the contract packages. So our program unit sort of kicks off that process by working directly with our grantees to tidy up application exhibits. So those are budgets, work plans, etc., which entails a fair amount of back and forth with our grantees. That process takes roughly a month. Once all those components are finalized, our grant contracts team at the board takes over. We package up all of the required documentation and send that grant contract package off to our partners at EDD, namely their business operations planning and support division for processing. Current timelines at EDD are roughly 4 to 6 months, which entails a series of analyst review, legal review, and fiscal review. So as Joel mentioned, over the past 6 months, we've submitted quite a few contract packages, somewhere north of 120 contracts, totaling over $400 million. So very high volume over the past 6 months or so. And we've seen processing timelines generally do sit in that 4 to 6 month range. After EDD receives all the approvals, the final contract package then goes out to our grantee for signature, then back to us at the board for a final signature. And then once all signatures are received, the contract is considered executed and grantees are cleared to begin program activities. So there's kind of a high level overview of that process. And if there's any questions, they're happy to answer those.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I was going to say hats off to EDD because it's been a huge volume, and it's not just coming from us, it's coming from other departments inside the agency. And the EDD, Nancy, has been really terrific in working with us. I think I said this at a meeting once to you, and that the State Workforce Board is a real pain in the ass. And you said, yeah, that's true. And the process has really been improving at EDD. I mean, so you've taken this incredible scale and managed to really smartly kind of move things faster over time. So we really appreciate the great work of EDD and the partnership.
Thanks, Tim.
And you did agree that we were a pain in the ass, which I appreciate it too.
I did.
Thank you, Mike, Tim, Nancy. We don't have any comments or questions. Tim, is there anyone else on your team you wanted to report out?
Yeah, I wanted to hand it back to Joelle if you wanted to say something about the breaking barriers to employment.
Sure, I can talk about breaking barriers, and I think Mike was going to do a little bit on hire also.
That's right.
So for breaking barriers, that was a 21-22 allocation. It was approximately $25 million. So all of that money has gone out. There were 42 projects funded, and they're just starting to roll. But we did learn from the process, there was some great innovations that we've adopted in Hire, which Mike will talk about. One is the stakeholder engagement while we're developing the process so that we could very intentionally provide equitable access to those funds to smaller CBOs, and then also support them through the application process as well as through their grant management process. And so we have taken a lot of lessons from Breaking Barriers and applied it to Hire. Another one that Breaking Barriers did is they did some small upfront payments to those CBOs so that gives them funding to actually get started without having to be a stretch on their own budgets, because typically with a contract, they do the services and then they submit an invoice, and that invoice process is, upwards of 45 days before they get reimbursed for it. And so it makes it a real struggle for smaller CBOs to do this work without a little bit of money upfront. And so that's something that we also did with Breaking Barriers that we put into Hire. And then we're starting to get the quarter narrative reports from Breaking Barriers, and just one highlight story that came up. This is from Rise Up Industries. And this is, quote, Ernesto, a 33-year-old Hispanic male who was part of the justice system with a secondary school education level, graduated the 18-month program and received a USDOL approved certificate in CNC machine operating on February 24th, 23. Immediately upon graduation, was hired by CNC Manufacturing as a machine operator at $23 an hour and received the following benefits, including sick leave, paid family leave, health insurance. Alongside employment, he's working on his associate degree at San Diego City College's machine technology program with about a year remaining. So there's just a quick success story out of Breaking Barriers early on. So I'll hand it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Joel. So yeah, I'm going to touch on our new Hire initiative. The Hire initiative, that's short for Helping Justice-Involved Reenter Employment. And Hire was funded through a $50 million budget allocation that came to the board through the 22-23 budget, specifically AB 178. Excuse me, per AB 178, that funding is intended for community-based organizations and other nonprofits to provide direct and supportive services, as well as needs-related payments to formerly incarcerated and other justice-involved individuals. Hire is, in a lot of ways, a sister program to our Prison New Employment Initiative, with the primary distinction that P2E is targeted to local workforce boards and regional planning units, whereas Hire is targeted to community-based organizations. That said, all Hire grantees will be required to partner with both a local government entity and a local workforce development board, with the hope that this will help integrate some of these grassroots CBOs into the greater statewide network of workforce service providers who serve folks from the reentry population, and help them transition from the correction system to the workforce system. So as Joel mentioned, carrying forward some of the innovations that came out of Breaking Barriers, we've had a fairly robust stakeholder engagement process for Hire, which began back last fall. Our team spoke with a variety of reentry service providers from around the state, which really helped inform many of the components of the grant program. This past winter, we hosted a series of what we called mixer sessions with the intent of fostering partnership building among the reentry focused CBOs and nonprofits in advance of the open application period. And the motivation behind this partnership building phase was to prepare interested applicants for the unique funding structure of this grant, what we're calling the hub and spoke model. This hub and spoke model is designed to help smaller grassroots CBOs access state funding. So again, Joel touched on this, but providing that more equitable access to funding from these smaller organizations that generally face some administrative hurdles that can act as a barrier to them tapping into state funding. So this hub and spoke model, just kind of a quick overview. It's a little complicated, but it basically entails a single lead applicant, generally a larger community-based organization with some experience managing state grants, that acts as our point of contact at the state and handles most of the grant administration. So this lead applicant or the hub, they work together with up to 9 partner organizations, and those smaller partner organizations are the spokes in the hub and spoke model. And those spokes effectively function as subgrantees. And as far as the application process goes, that full package of applications, both from the hub and the spokes, they'll submit that under the umbrella of a single application package. And again, that hub will handle most of the reporting and most of the administration of the grant to sort of ease some of that administrative burden for the smaller organizations. So a lot of smaller innovations that we're really excited about. Those are articulated in our request for applications document, which was released on May 15th alongside the online application. We've also developed a database of interested applicants designed to facilitate ongoing partnership building. We've developed an application guide and a video tutorial to assist applications in navigating this hub and spoke application process. And we're continuing to post a weekly Q&A document on our website. Also in the process of posting a series of public webinars, including one this afternoon. And we were down in San Diego at the California Workforce Association conference last week to present the new initiative. And just kind of a quick note, internally, development of this grant has really been a rewarding process for us. It's been a full team effort. We've had contributions from really every unit in our organization, from program team, our field team, evaluation unit, communications, and our executives have all had a hand in building this program. And we think it's really highlighted the talent and creativity of the folks on our staff here at the board. So the application for hire is open through July 10th. Review and scoring will take place shortly thereafter. Award announcements slated for later this fall, and we expect program activities to begin next year.
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to put it out there to everyone if anyone wants to share what they're seeing on the ground. And Jeremy, if you can hear me, I'm curious about the Women in the Trades event and how that went. Also, just putting that out there.
Oh, well, thank you, Angela. Yes, Jeremy Smith here from the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Hope I'm coming through clear. We just this Saturday and Sunday had a women's conference. We actually came up with this over a decade and a half ago and did it ourselves for many years, but it became so big that the National Building Trades took it over, and there's a national women's conference that they run. But we wanted to bring one back just for California. So we had about 450 women construction workers who were in unions from all over the state down at the Sheraton in Sacramento. We did a lot of workshops, had a lot of speakers, all the usual conference stuff. It's really good energy at these conferences. As we all know, women construction workers are unfortunately few and far between. So getting together with each other and commiserating and helping each other out, it brings a lot of energy. So we were happy that we had a representative from the Division of Apprenticeship Standards to talk about the ERICA grant that everybody I think probably knows about here, and several other great speakers. So thank you, Angela, for letting me talk about that. We'll be doing it once a year, and hopefully we'll open it up to maybe you, Mr. Chair, or Tim next year to do a workshop or come speak too.
It'd be our pleasure, and thank you for your leadership on that, Jeremy. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, so I want to ask our staff if there's any public comment that's been submitted on this item.
There's no public comment at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we'll then proceed to other business. Our next full board meeting is coming up actually later this month, June 21st. At 10 a.m. My understanding is that'll be a hybrid meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Director? Okay, yes. The rest of the dates are on our website. Now we'll proceed to general public comments. Staff, do we have any general public comments submitted?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Nancy, and second by Jeremy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then are there any abstentions or nays? Thank you. The motion carries, and we adjourn the meeting at 10:48 a.m. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.